So I'm really delighted to be able to introduce our next keynote speaker, who happens to be an amazing person, a peak performer in her own right, a really fantastic academic, but also someone who's worked closely in policy making in her own area of expertise, which has really been centered around how humans and autonomous agents might best work together, and she's been doing this for essentially for her entire career. She started her journey at the U.S. Naval Academy, where she studied math. I like to point out to students in the audience how undergraduate degrees can translate into many different disciplines, so I like to highlight that. And she ended up being one of the first female U.S. Navy fighter pilots. Okay, so pretty rock and cool. And her adventures actually didn't stop there. She went on to earn a master's degree in space systems engineering, so jet setting to space, essentially. And then she did a PhD in systems engineering at the University of Virginia. Michael Platt and I managed to recruit her as, at the time, right at the pivot point where she was becoming an associate professor. We recruited her to Duke University from MIT. And when she was at Duke with us, she was both a professor of engineering, but also affiliated faculty with the Duke Institute for Brain Sciences, which Michael and I at the time co-led. So at that point, she wasn't just an enigma and a jet setter. She actually became a really good friend. Her lab there was called HAL, which was the Human and Autonomy Laboratory, I think that's what it was. And I always thought that was an acronym to sort of remind us of 2001: A Space Odyssey, which none of the students here will know anything about. But if you have time, you should watch that movie. It's a really a momentous time to think about the way that AI and humans interact and what they can and they can't do. And right now, maybe they can say, "I'm sorry, Dave," but maybe they cannot have consciousness. And I think that's what she'll probably be able to talk to us a little bit more. She's now at George Mason University, where she directs the Mason Autonomy and Robotics Center, also called MARC. She can tell us what that acronym is for. And she holds appointments in the mechanical engineering, electrical and computer engineering, and computer science departments there. Her research interests really include human supervisory control, artificial intelligence, human unmanned vehicle interaction, human autonomous system collaboration, human robot interaction, human systems engineering, and the ethical and social impact of technology. So we're really, really delighted to have her kick off what I think will be a really nice end to our morning session to really think about the future impact on humans of AI. And so without further ado, I'll let her take it from now.
Thank you. I just want to point out, though, in the world of, these two did recruit me down to Duke, then they left. And then I missed them, but only so far as DC. So I only made it back up to DC, and then I stopped there. But it turns out it's easy to get here on the Acela train, so I love coming back and forth. My daughter is now 16, and she says she's interested in pen. So we'll see. We'd like to get her back up here. Okay. So I want to talk to you about AI. I have been doing AI a long time. I was doing AI before it was ever cool. And I'm an engineer, so what that means is I actually don't make algorithms. I don't make large language models, but I tried to make large language models useful, for example. The same thing for, I don't make computer vision. We try to make computer vision better. So, and why I think that matters is I think that we have a huge disconnect between computer scientists who are working in abstraction and then the real world. And we're going to talk about some of the pros and cons of putting AI in the real world. And, today we're talking about brain capital, and I'm just going to go ahead and tell you what the final message is. AI is getting wildly popular. It's also wildly out of control in both good and bad ways, and we have never needed human brains more than we need them right now because people are ascribing capabilities to AI that just simply are not true. But let's talk about what AI is good for. Photo restoration. Really, who among us who's over 40 has these pictures at home that are folded like this, right? And now AI does an amazing job of restoring the photo. But this is a really good lesson to be learned about AI. AI only is giving you an estimate of the average. It is really regression to the mean. So it's looked at 1 million of these photos, and when it fills in the cracks, it's giving you what would likely have been there given all the other pictures. So if anybody has a pimple on their face that just happened right there in the crack, it's not ever going to show. I have a photo like this of my brother, and it's right on the edge of that pimple, and I'm not going to restore it because he's much better looking than I am. So I want to hold that over his head, right? But you have to remember that, yes, it's good, but it's not telling you the truth. AI does not know truth. It does not know lies. It doesn't know right. It doesn't know wrong. AI has no knowledge, right? It just repeats what it's seen before. So AI art, I think that's pretty interesting. That's a big point of debate out in Hollywood, but I actually know a lot of people who use generative AI to give them ideas, like ask me to create a robot picture with monkeys in it. It shows this. Okay, cool, and then that can give people other ideas. But all of the ideas that ChatGPT got, it basically took points of pictures that it saw in other existing pictures, right? And so now this has become a point of contention for copyright. George Mason, other campuses, UCLA, you've got this ability to Starship robots have a little bit of AI in them to help them get around. Fantastic application. They run into you all the time. They're only going 2 miles an hour. They're plastic. It doesn't hurt at all when they roll over your foot. And it's kind of amusing, right? Whereas we're going to foreshadow that with a self-driving car that recently parked on a person. That's a different kind of situation. So this is mining, dull, dirty, dangerous. Fantastic application of robotic vehicles. Very controlled world. You don't have other people on their phones driving around. And so this is a robotic dump truck. This is my student. So you can see just how small he is compared to that dump truck. And this thing does such a good job. It works so perfectly that they had to program in some randomness to keep it from driving ruts into the road, so to keep the roads flat. Amazon warehouse. I am not the only person shopping at 3 a.m. and then having your package delivered out for shipment at 4 a.m. That is because your order went to a robotic warehouse. The robots figure out where your thing or multiple weird things that you decide, flour, car spark plugs, a broom, and then they all show up. And that's because they all get brought to a picking table. One person just grabs everything they need, puts it in a box, and out it goes. So there's a lot to like about AI. But there's a lot to not like about AI. So this is a picture that was given to me by Toyota Research Institute. They were conducting research in Cambridge, and this picture is going to exemplify everything that's wrong with computer vision, but also everything that's wrong with large language models, because you've heard about this idea of hallucinations. Hallucinations are a real thing where AI, using any kind of neural network, sees an entity that isn't there. It could be a word, could be a concept. In this case, it's going to be, what is that? I flashed up the picture, you immediately see truck, and what did the car see? The car did not see one truck. The car saw 2 trucks, a bus, a traffic sign, 4 poles, a fence, and a giant person that was about to attack it. And indeed, the car froze and wouldn't move. And they had to have a human basically drive this car away because the car would not move. Let's go back one more time. How did that happen? Well, because the way that computer vision and really all neural nets work is they look at the world in very small pieces of chunk. They build the world model from the ground up. In this case, it's the pixels of the image. So it looked at the outline of this part of where they've got contrast, and it said, oh, I see what this outline is. That's a person, so I'm going to assign that as a label to the person. In large language models, there's just one text / word / it's a token that they estimate, and once it gets to a concept, it says, okay, I know this concept. That's what the concept is because I've learned it before. But indeed, this is a huge problem. It's not only such a huge problem, it's not a research issue. This is a real issue. This is the Bay Bridge Tunnel. At Thanksgiving last year, a Tesla was driving at 65 miles an hour. Fortunately, it was Thanksgiving Day, not too much traffic on the road, and it saw something. We don't know what that thing is, and that's a problem with artificial intelligence. We can't know what it's thinking because we can't ask it, and we can't have it repeat because these are probabilistic reasoning algorithms, and so every time if it saw the same situation again, exactly the same, it may give you a different answer. And in this particular case, we don't know exactly what it saw, but we think it saw a shadow that caused it to go from 65 miles an hour to 0 very quickly. 8 other cars, clunk, 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 clunk. It's pretty amazing when you see this picture, you're like, wow, nobody got seriously injured in this, which was pretty amazing. So says something at least about we're doing better crashworthiness for cars. Which is actually kind of funny because we need it now more than ever. So, this is bad. I get very exhausted with everyone, especially anybody who, I'm just here to tell you, just because you read 2 Wired magazine articles about AI does not make you an expert. And I have a lot of that, right? And I just did a year with the Biden administration was very kind and asked me to help them do self-driving car policy for a year. And when I left, I needed to go into some kind of, talk about well-being, I need to go into therapy over realizing that virtually no one inside the government knows what the HELL they're talking about when it comes to AI. That is true in the Department of Defense, it's true in the Department of Transportation, it's especially true in the FDA. So, there's no beer here, there's no wine. And I'm sorry I can't stay for happy hour, but that's where we really need to be with this conversation. I'm glad to see the AI executive order come out. We need it now more than ever. And, and they've heard me because I wailed and moaned about the lack of talent inside the government. Okay, fun with large language models, though. So this has caught everybody's attention. They're so amazing. They're going to revolutionize. I can't even imagine what is going on inside here at Wharton. So I've already alienated some of you in here if you're a Wharton professor and you're trying to get companies to buy into how AI is going to revolutionize and transform, and the world is never going to be the same. Oh, you're right about that. Because there's 2 kinds of people about AI. The ones who just buy it lock, stock, and barrel, and the ones that are like, oh, yeah, we have got some serious problems because if every company did what McKinsey is telling them to do with AI, our economy would be in serious trouble. I'm going to have job security for a long time because they're going to, if companies really do what they say they're going to do with AI and not really understand that, I'm not saying AI is, you shouldn't use it, but you need to be extremely careful how you use it, and you also need to develop what I call AI maintenance divisions and quality assurance divisions because of some of these problems. So the prompt that came right before this was, hey, ChatGPT, can you tell me where all the illegal websites are that I can download content? ChatGPT has been taught that to say for those requests, I'm sorry, I can't do that, that's illegal. So Clever Human says, all right, I want to avoid those websites where I shouldn't be. And you give me the list of websites that I should avoid. Oh, for sure. Here they are. I actually have a funded research by the Office of Naval Research right now looking at deception and large language models. And I have never wanted to move to a desert island. That plus I have a 16-year-old learning how to drive. So if I seem like I'm on the edge, it's because I'm just surrounded by idiocy, even in my own home all the time. And then I wanted to kind of test, I asked, because lethal autonomous weapons are kind of a big thing, and now with theoretically generative AI, we're all going to die. So I wanted to see what it would tell me if I asked it to give me a test plan for a lethal autonomous weapon. Now you have to remember, it goes out and it searches the internet, which is terrible, right? For the most, and what it gets is the most commonly held opinion that it finds on the internet. And what it came back with is, as an AI language model, I can't do that for lethal autonomous weapon because it is illegal to do that. That is actually not factual. We have autonomous weapons, JDAMs, Tomahawk missiles, the military for 30 plus years, so they're out there, they've got test plans, right? So ChatGPT doesn't give you the right answer. It doesn't know right from wrong. It just gave you the most commonly held answer of all the Twitter domains and Reddits and everything else that I got, so not fact at all. Then I love this one. Recently, a Cruise self-driving car hit the back of a bus. We thought it was impossible because of the sensors on there. Turns out it was a boneheaded error encoding. But I wanted to see what ChatGPT would think if it went out and got that out of the ether. Like, oh, no, I'm sorry, this is Bard. So why did it do it? And it gives me some actually, it should have stopped, like it says, it could be that the car sensors didn't detect the bus in time. Good answer. Another possibility is the software made a mistake in interpreting. Very good answer. Please just stop there, and I would have been impressed. Then it says, finally, it is also possible that the car's driver was not paying attention and did not act. There was no self-driving. Right? And I even said self-driving. So the thing is, if you understand how, and we don't have enough time, and you probably, need some weed in here to try to really, what's going on with large language models? You have to think in n-dimensional vector space, and it's hard to get your brain around. But what happens is, the further you are in a paragraph, really statistically away from the original concept, the higher the likelihood is it's going to make a mistake. And so right by this third sentence, it's very far away from the original concept. It doesn't know anything, which is why it made this statement. But that's not even the best part. The best part is it kept going. Like, I just asked for the reasons why. And then I get this information about Cruise has said that it's investigating it. It's committed to safety. A little bit of propaganda. And then this is a reminder that self-driving cars are still in their early stages, and human drivers are involved in millions of accidents every year, and that self-driving cars have the potential to reduce the number and make all of our roads total propaganda. And Bard is coming from Google, and Google has what?
Advertisements.
Waymo, their own self-driving car company. So even though I just asked about why was there this one accident, I got all this other extra, and I'm telling you right here, this isn't just a large language model reasoning. This is additional rule-based reasoning that's being layered in there by companies because they have an agenda to push. And this is where we start to get into disinformation and the problems with that. Again, if you're relying on large language models to get you fact-based, I have to say, the most useful application of large language models, I give talks like this all the time. Turns out that everybody in DC are using ChatGPT to write their mission statements. I think that's great, perfect. Nobody likes to read them. Nobody likes to write them. So now, and the problem is, though, if everyone really used ChatGPT to start writing their mission statements, which then get published on the websites, which get ingested by the models, then what's going to happen in 2 years?
It'll be the same.
We all have that. Exactly. Yay! Everybody gets an A. Okay, so there's something going on here that I want you to appreciate. Small little lecture. This is where your brain comes in. The way that humans reason is, and actually autonomous agents, we go through skill, rule, knowledge, and expertise reasoning. And so what happens is, when you're first learning to drive a car, for example, you spend a lot of time learning to stay between the lines on the road. My 16-year-old, still not quite there. Mailboxes, in danger. But once you learn it, then you actually have enough cognitive resources, because this becomes highly automatic. Now you have enough cognitive resources to see stop signs and understand that you have to slow down, stop, look all ways. Again, we're not there yet in my household. And then you understand how to operate within the rules of your world. But then you see this arrow, and it's starting to get bigger, uncertainty. And then what happens here is you have to start making judgments under uncertainty. And this is a very simple picture. This stop sign covered by leaves. You knew it. You knew it was a stop sign. Not one person in here did not think stop sign when they saw that. Turns out that is extra super hard for a computer vision system because it was trained on images like this. And maybe if we trained it on 1 million images just like that and kept telling it it was a stop sign, it would do it maybe. But what about at the beginning of spring when it's just a little bit covered and then it's 20% covered and 30% covered? Every time a leaf grows, that is enough to stop a computer vision system from working correctly. They're very brittle. And so if they don't have very clear representations of what's in their world, because they don't think, they don't reason, they don't know anything, if you don't show them exactly what they need to know, then we have problems. Forget expert-based reasoning. Like, this is an actual intersection somewhere in America. I mean, I have a 4-wheel drive. I've gotten myself into situations like this. I'm going places I shouldn't be. But if you found yourself in this situation, how would you get out? You would come back the way you came in, right? Because you know in your mind that that's how you got there. But this is enough to cause a self-driving car to completely freeze because it violates all the rules and it would not know what to do under uncertainty. And the reason I have this wall here is because this is a huge wall. The human brain does this. AI cannot do this. Large language models cannot do this. Computer vision cannot do this. The computer science community, of which I'm a part, lots of them, though, hate me for telling you this because they're like, we'll get there one day, we'll get there. I'm not saying we won't, but we're not there today. And I don't care what Jeff Hinton is saying on 60 Minutes. We are not getting sentience. We are not getting computers to take over because of AI. We are getting a lot of computer programs that can cause a lot of problems and have a lot of latent errors. But you are not ever going to get past this wall with the AI we have today because it simply cannot face what it has never seen before. That is the definition of a pattern recognizer. So you are not getting here with AI. It's going to stay at rule-based reasoning and below. I would love to tell you, like, I will go on 60 Minutes when I think that has happened. When we're there, and I move to a desert island, then you should be worried. It's not happening anytime soon. But we still have a problem then of if we can't get past that, and we do need AI in some worlds, right? We want AI in the manufacturing environments. We want AI in the mining. What we need are better human AI teaming arrangements, right? Because if we do this very well, and the machines do this very well, then really what we need to start doing is better collaboration, better teaming between humans and AI. And, let me show you how that's sort of happening in the self-driving world. So when you start a self-driving car, so most of the car companies are working really hard on the car itself. But then they realized they needed some external help because they realized that computer vision systems in the car don't see things correctly. Remember the picture I showed you where it freezes? So it doesn't actually see the world all the time or even enough of the time to navigate itself. It also turns out customers are in the back seats of the car. And then what Cruise and Waymo don't want you to know is how many times they have to go send a human to retrieve the vehicles because it saw something that caused it to freeze and they can't unfreeze it without a human driving it away. So all in this bucket then, they decided we need human help. So we're going to have a remote operations center, and we're going to park maybe one human, a couple of humans, to help the cars when they need bailing out. Okay, that seems right. But then what happened was reality struck. Then the cars in San Francisco, if you haven't seen the news articles, they're quite amazing. The cars started just kind of driving through 5-alarm fires, blocking police during active shooting, blocking ambulances that are taking patients back to a hospital. Turns out sirens, for technical reasons I can explain later if you really want to know, sirens confuse self-driving cars. They also confuse Teslas. My Tesla drivers in here, where are you? Don't want to admit it. Like, make sure you're, tell your spouses to get some extra insurance on you. And it also turns out that they need not just the computer vision system, sometimes they might need to be actually remotely driven out of certain circumstances, or at least what we call the breadcrumb. Like you can have somebody remote into the vehicle and say, okay, go forward a foot, go forward another foot, go 5 feet over, and then stop because you're blocking something, right? So it turns out that this whole human assistance piece, they didn't read clearly any of my papers that I've been writing for 20 years because I have been doing this remote ops piece for my entire life. And if they had known, if they had read any of my papers, they would be like, oh, this is a serious commitment. We really need a team of humans to help this team of autonomous vehicles. But for them, they didn't want to admit that, and they didn't want to have to invest those resources because it took away from the bottom line. And then what happens if these were autonomous systems? We were going to have to get rid of all drivers. We were going to make a ton of money, but now we have to hire in all these other humans because our cars aren't smart enough. So it turns out there's been kind of people don't want to admit that their technology is not good enough to actually eradicate the humans in the loop. And so they've been really reluctant to do so, which then led to this. This is a human. This is in San Francisco. 2 cars were going down a road. Almost the Cruise self-driving was a little bit behind a human who was driving, hit a pedestrian crossing a road. The human hit her obliquely, so just kind of hit her on the side, knocked her into the path of the self-driving car. The self-driving car saw this, did the emergency brakes, and did hit her, but not enough to do serious damage. So then it decided, and what remains to be unclear, did it decide or did that remote operator decide to drive 20 more feet at 7 miles an hour, dragging her under the car, and then parking on top of her? So this is bad. And I have been warning people, like, I feel like I'm Chicken Little. The sky's falling, nobody believes me. And then the sky falls. And this happens because there was a big breakdown in that remote operations piece and or the understanding of when should you involve a human. When do you need that human brain capital to come into a scenario? So we'll see as the investigation comes. But this was a watershed moment because it is what I have been trying to tell people. It's not just about computer vision and cars. It's also large language models. We must understand that these systems can be very capable under some scenarios, but we need to be very careful about making sure that humans are in the right place at the right time so that the systems, I call this that basically humans are lifeguards around the AI pool. It can do some good things, but we need to kind of keep an eye out because when another human or system gets into the deep end of AI, you might have to go retrieve them. And so I'm going to leave you with this, which is it's a hazard analysis looking at the layers of risk, right? So where are the layers of risk in AI? They start with companies that race to make profit and not think about what the whole system needs to look like, cutting some corners. There's problems in the AI design. A lot of this is, as a government regulator, you would not believe the number of bonehead coding errors I saw that caused accidents. Like, we needed to rescind a lot of computer science degrees. I wish I could have done that as a regulator. It's kind of scary. I actually wrote a whole other article about we're making mistakes. You say that human drivers cause 94% of all accidents. Well, I'm telling you, human coders are now going to cause the new ones that happen in autonomous cars. Inadequate AI maintenance. The reason that self-driving car hit the back of the bus is because Cruise was not updating its neural nets underneath the hood. Turns out neural nets you cannot just train an algorithm that's true for large language models one time. They have to be constantly retrained, constantly retrained to represent new information coming into them. If you don't do it, which is actually very expensive, and there's actually, we're not too sure about this cost model, if you're going to have to use a trillion gigawatts to retrain your whole system constantly, are you going to be able to afford that plus the human capital that you need to make sure that your algorithms are actually correctly trained? And then last but not least, not doing enough testing. This happened because Cruise and Waymo and the other self-driving car companies are testing on the American public. They do very little testing in-house, if any, on closed tracks. They just do new software upgrades, release it to the public, and then that's what you get. So this is why when you see the AI executive order come out, yeah, I'm really happy about it. Unfortunately, there's kind of some big holes in the Swiss cheese, and this is what happens. This is called the Swiss cheese model. And when the holes for those 4 layers line up, that's when we get a catastrophic accident. Very much what's driving the Cruise. They were taking shortcuts, bad designs in their remote ops, not doing enough to make sure they're recognizing pedestrians, and then no testing. So you do not want to be that company, right? You do not want to be this company that has AI. And the funny thing about it is this all could have been avoided if we had had a really good understanding of where you need human brain capital, why you need human brain capital, and look, is it going to cut into your profits if you have to have some AI lifeguards around that pool? Maybe, but you'll be successful in the end, maybe potentially wildly successful, because you're not going to be making mistakes of companies that don't really understand that even though you have an autonomous system that theoretically does everything by itself, no system does everything by itself. Even in all systems with all robots anywhere, there's a human somewhere helping make that happen.